Introduce to you the president of the Friends of Barbados Dlp Association, Marlene D. Mead, who's going to welcome you.
Former Consul General.
Grant us strength when our own strength fails us. You are everything, and we surrender all of you. We humbly ask for your blessings on everyone gathered here this evening, and that you cover us in the holy blood of Jesus. May all that is said and done be in divine order. Amen.
My brother and sister, you guys also said, go straight on the white grades are, so they say, none of issues, and then follow the interpretation, you're free to practice. Sure, you relate to feed numerous questions like that. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to present to you the leader of the
Thank you, former CG. We will not start it in the proper Barbadian way unless we start it with the chocolate. And thanks for the invitation to New York and to this place. And I shall honor this place by telling the truth. And hopefully at the end of that, you will ask me some questions for greater truth. Certainly it's a pleasure being here in New York. Whoever is responsible for what took place yesterday, I want to congratulate that person. It's a wonderful occasion. For years, I remember names. Man, he was just a name. This gentleman walking in has never read early anything. That's my brother. That's my brother. Our Thorne. Yeah. First, I'd like to ask you to grab and welcome, please.
Thanks.
And you will add Lawrence, he likes to call himself, whatever you call him. He's the Thorne representative in New York. Yeah. Grant special welcome to you. Huh?
Come on in there.
There's two up there. I want to begin by telling you a story that may or may not be familiar to you, but I suspect the story is familiar to you. And I'm glad my eldest brother came because it is a story that occurred, and it's a true story that occurred at his house some years ago. I was staying there and I came out morning time, and there's a side door that looks on to the neighbor's house. Lawrence, I hope I'm not going to make you in trouble. I'm leaving, but I finish speak. And this morning, I pushed the door of Lawrence's house, and when I pushed the door open, the next door neighbor, he pushed this door open as well.
Okay.
It's not. And you know what Barbadians do when they see another human being on mornings.
Yes.
So I was about to raise my hand and say good morning. And as my hand was going up, I just froze. And my mouth opened, and I was about to say good morning. And he looked at me, I looked at him, and midway as my hand went up and my mouth opened to say good morning, he just made a 90-degree turn. And I said, really, I'm not in Barbados. We know that growing up in Barbados, that is part of the Barbadian experience. The first person you see when you leave the house, morning. You turn the corner and you see somebody looking out their house, morning. You get on the bus. You're going to say, because you can drive in the morning.
I got no Wi-Fi.
And you sit, and the person next to you heard, morning. You get out of the bus, and you're walking through town, and whether you know the person or not, morning. And that is a ritual that is so important to us as Barbadians. Greeting each other. Welcome, Linda. This is being streamed, so if you don't want people to know you're here. This is I'm going to look at the camera and say this is the Watson Lord from the office of the Consul General of the Right. Welcome again. The topic of my speech is and as I say, that's an important ritual in Barbados. Good morning. And we shorten it and we say morning. And it is our way as Barbadians of welcoming each other to a new day of hope. In a sense, it is a promise to the other person that we stand in solidarity with them. That is the kind of society we are, that is the kind of community we are. We're a communal people in the saints. We're together in the struggle. When we say morning, we mean it. When we say morning, it means something to us as Barbadians. I'm going to continue the ritual of morning. This is Everton Briggs. And when we were going to the Rockhampton Road, my mother would look out through her window and say to his grandmother, morning. Morning, Trixie.
Morning, thank you.
And she would say, morning, Miss Thorne. And the day started like that. Everton has been in the United States for many, many years. As I said, everything is fight of the day, and the type of the morning. That means so much to us as Barbadians. So that when Lawrence's neighbor just looked at me and looked away, I knew I certainly no longer glad that you love so much. And I want to tell you a lot this evening about the land of Europe. A land that you love so much. And a land that you're now required to love even more. Because the land that you left behind is changing. And it has changed a lot. And I will say to you in a short while that the land that you left, the land you love so much, needs you now more than ever. As people who say morning and meant it, and knew what it meant, and knew that it meant solidarity, a common purpose, and a desire to see each other succeed. And that's who we were. And that's who you were. And I remind you of something you do not know. That when the door of our land closed, we could no longer see. Many years were spent at what you see well airport. It became the Grantley Adams International Airport. Prepare our lives physically, but there's a real sense in which you never left us. We don't know what was in your mind as you journeyed to a new place, a new land, a strange land, a land in which when you got on the train, when you opened the side door, nobody said morning. That's what you'd left behind. And I'm doing the ritual of names, but I don't know this name, but nevertheless, morning. And as I said, you walked into the aircraft, but you didn't walk out of our lives. Because ever so often, and this was the 60s and the 70s, and I think up to the 80s, and I choose the period of the 80s because the 80s is that period in which Barbados really changed, really began to change. And I know a lot of you here left before that fundamental change took place. And I want to say thanks to you on behalf of Barbados for what you did for Barbados. When you came into a land that, for many of you, was lonely, a land of struggle, a big land. And there's a sense in which you were on the front line of the fight against poverty, because we were all born into a country that was poor. And the majority of us were poor. And it felt as if all of us were poor. And in the 60s and the 70s, and I would say up to the mid-80s, we fought against poverty largely by two means in Barbados. Education was one, and I recognize the organization that is here this evening, Comrade Price, the Democratic Labour Party in 1961 did something that changed the lives of the poor people in Barbados. It made education a right, whereas it used to be a privilege. And it was education that Barbadians used in the fight against poverty. And for many of us, that education that we pursued there in Barbados not only changed our lives, but changed the life of a country.
And the other means by which we fought against poverty was emigration. Emigration away from Barbados for that better life. And for that life that made better the lives of your family that you left behind. Again, I say thank you. My speech this evening, my talk, will be a reunion with those of you who came to this great United States of America and never forgot where you came from and never forgot those you left behind. And we would see the envelope with the blue and red edges. And the postman would bring it. Man, and when the envelope had those blue and red edges, it said air mail. And sometimes they put in Spanish, por avión. Can I bring these secrets out? And the mother would hold it up to the window. And she felt it. And it was thick. And she nodded her head. And she opened it very carefully. And inside, not only was there that letter written on the thin blue paper, you remember these things? It came from you. And she would open it. And if it were 5 or 10 or 20 or 50, they had hundreds in those days. It came from you. And how can we not come to this task this evening and not say thank you to you who were the soldiers in the front line of the fight against poverty back home. And those envelopes became so important that the Central Bank of Barbados, when it is calculating the national income of Barbados, in other words, all the money that is made in Barbados, the Central Bank of Barbados calculates, we call them remittances, those envelopes that save lives, that bought groceries, that bought shoes for children on Christmas morning, and the little plaid shirt for the excursion. Derek Aline, tell them. This was our experience. And this was how our lives were changing, because there were soldiers on whom the Pan Am door closed, and you went off to a war against poverty in your country. This evening I've come to honor you, and I've come to express deepest gratitude on behalf of a country that you never left behind. And as I've said, the Central Bank of Barbados acknowledges what you have done for your country. Again, I say, the deepest expression of gratitude is mine to you this afternoon on behalf of a country. You have another. Please come. Please come and welcome. Good evening. We don't wish to convey to you this evening that our relationship, or Barbadian relationship with its diaspora, is based entirely on money. It is not an entirely financial relationship. As I've said, it is a relationship. It is a personal relationship. It is a personal relationship based on gratitude to you who went into the front lines of the battle against poverty in our country. I come this evening and we ask you to involve your lives in the life of Barbados, to involve your lives in the lives of relatives and friends and your village and your church and your school. I know as leader of the opposition, I'm expected to criticize the government. I'm expected to speak ill of Barbados. I won't do that with intent. I will tell the truth, though. And all is not well. All is not well in Barbados. And your relationship with your country is now more important than it ever was. As I've said, you sustained us in a time of financial need. We have a deeper need now in Barbados, and I'll tell you about it. And this diaspora, this New York diaspora, which I consider the 31st constituency of Barbados, because I think it is the New York diaspora that is the biggest of all the diasporas, whether it's Toronto or London, Atlanta, New Jersey, Philadelphia. I think it is the New York diaspora that is numerically the largest. I think it is the New York diaspora that is that diaspora that went on the front lines, as I've said, not only to bring improvement to your own lives, but you brought salvation to the lives of those of us you left behind. And Barbados needs you now. And as I've said, the struggle is not merely financial. It is a different kind of struggle. And I hope to make that the theme of my speech here this evening. I refer to them as the 4 C's. The 4 C's. When you left Barbados, it was a gentle society. As I've said, we used to say morning. For those who came late, we used to say morning, and it meant a lot. It came from deep within. It was an expression of solidarity. And for those of us who are bashful, it was an expression even of love for your neighbor, love for country, and in a very wholesome way, a love of self, not self-love as vanity, but self-esteem, believing that our parents made something of us of which we were proud. And I want to reintroduce you to the Barbados that you probably visit twice a year if you're retired. Some of you may be living in Barbados and here. I dare say there may be some split loyalties as between here and Barbados. But as I've said earlier, and I repeat, we need you there. If not physically, we need that sense of values with which you left Barbados and that you've maintained in a life of struggle in the big country. But I applaud you for the success that you've made of lives. And again, I say, I express gratitude for what you've done for your country. But I reintroduce you to a country, and I will define it according to the 4 C's. Crime, cost of living, corruption, and a culture of moral decay. Permit me to repeat: crime, cost of living, corruption, and a culture of moral decay. I left Barbados on Friday, and up to when I left Barbados, 27 murders had taken place from January 1st to when I left Barbados on Friday. Living in New York, it's a number that may mean very little to you. But when you consider the population of Barbados, that's a really large number. We call it the incidence of murder per capita for population or size. That is high. and for the culture that you knew, a good morning culture, that is way, way too high. When you left Barbados and a murder took place, it used to dominate the news and conversations for months. And you'd be waiting for the trial because this was big. And perhaps it was one of the three that would take place in an entire year. On Friday morning, when a murder occurs, we don't remember who was murdered on Wednesday. That's your country. That's the country you've left behind. So crime, Valerie, I say to you, crime is a problem. I remember our conversation. Crime is a serious problem in Barbados. The other C that I mentioned, cost of living. And you know how we used to come to New York and we'd go into the supermarkets and they'd say, oh man, you can go in the supermarkets and you can pick up a grape and eat it. That was prosperity. You came to the prosperous society. And I spoke of the envelope with the blue and red. What about? Why you all so bashful? You know how you change lives in Barbados? You know when the barrel came, how we felt? And we lifted the shirt and we measured the pants. And your elder brother hoped that it was a longer pants because he wanted it. But there was another pants in there for the short one. And again, you were sharing the prosperity of a country in which life was affordable. A visit to the supermarket in Barbados now is a traumatic occasion. There are people standing in the lines in supermarkets, and I know this is going online, but I've come to tell you the truth. I haven't come here to paint a glossy picture. I haven't come here to write any magazine for the tourism people. I've come to tell the truth. And there are people standing in lines at the supermarket now in Barbados who are asking the person ahead of them while they're paying, could you help me with my groceries? That's happening in Barbados. And last week I went into a shopping mall in Barbados and I saw this lady, looks like any one of us, well-clad, well-attired, decent-looking person, clean. And she waved at me and I said, hello, good evening. And when I was coming out of the shopping mall, I met a friend of mine. And he said to me, look, he opened his hand and said, look, I have $50 here. And I am going to give this to a lady who approached me. She walked up to him and said, look, I have my 2 children here. Can I ask you for some money? And he told me he had $220, I beg your pardon, $220 in his bank account. And he went to the ATM, took out 50 and gave it to her. As we say in Barbados, he squeezed it into her palm. That's how we do things, with decency, because we are good morning people. I saw he did it very discreetly. Now, I want to ask, and one her, I just hello, Donna. Just hello. I want to yes. Between it, no mathematicians. All the rest have 31, except February, and 29. You see how we work, Everett? You see what we test believes. And that's my theme this evening. Something has left the Barbadian spirit. Something has left Barbadian society. You left us physically. To the country we were. I don't know if you saw it. Yes, thank you. I don't know if you saw it. All right. The cost of living. I'm not going to say too much about this. I had a conversation with a sister from Massachusetts yesterday. We exchanged numbers. And we had a of politicians you left behind when you left in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. They're not rich. And they did not die rich. They died giving lives of service to country above self. And they did not pursue celebrity status. That's the problem in Barbados. Too many of us see experience. For want to be wealthy, over the stars, shoulder to shoulder equality. who we are. That's who you are. Beg your pardon.
Pilgrim holiness.
Yes, Pilgrim Holiness. That's how they shaped us. They shaped us to be honest. And not only honest, but God-fearing. Because it has become unfashionable in Barbados to say that you're God-fearing. Because if you are in pursuit of celebrity, you are your own God. We were taught to love and serve has become irrelevant. And so, to be humble enough and to bring up yourself in God. And so you become corrupt. And the fourth C, I've told you about crime, cost of living, corruption, and a culture of moral decay. Mr. Drake's just told you about the Pilgrim Holiness. fight. We want to maintain that affection. We still want to push us away because they're becoming young adults. And wrong. When I was telling parents for the last few years that will make that mental and for adulthood, I regret to say to you that those videos that Derek and John here will show you will demonstrate to you that that culture of moral decay has reached our primary schools. And these telephones, this TikTok, when a day and something called TikTok. It is intended to tell an entire story in what, 90 seconds? It doesn't go past a certain period of time that I read in a day. And discipline because you sat. Morning. Don't tell him. Enid Blyton and the book they took us to the public library to read. And they were shaping, we were being shaped. We wish somebody called the name Nancy Drew. Yeah. Yeah. We go Morgan and Jesse. We were reading and reading from the, so we were sitting in a disciplined environment and reading. And the act of reading was shaping us into individuals of discipline. That was the shaping of a human being from the time he was very young until he became a man. Train up a child in the way when he yes. In a story. As I said, even Rick Kirby was a story. And if you read it on Monday, it will continue on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. And the story is developing. And you're reading. That's gone. That's gone. In the election, both political parties had a manifesto. Phones should disappear from the lives of children because they recognize the injury, the damage that this technology is doing to children. So don't be surprised when John and Derek show you the videos, what you will see. It will appall you. It will scare you. And it will certainly remind you that the Barbados that you left behind is no longer existing in the way that you want it to be. So I tell you, the four scourges in Barbados now: crime, high cost of living, corruption, and a culture of moral decay. How do we turn it around? Now, last year before I crossed the floor, I smiled. This is water, by the way. Last year before I crossed the floor, I made this speech in Parliament, so principles don't change. Lil Rick has a song talking about me crossing the floor. Please enjoy it. Please enjoy it. I enjoy it. I made a speech in which I talked about the approaches to solving crime. And first one is the military that's based in America. When you but police involved in the police and the defense force solving problems. Canadians don't like that you know here in your country, your new country. But the ways of dealing with it would be to the present respect has gone. And I'm not going to bring the local politics to you this evening. I'm going to keep it, for the present purposes, I'm going to keep it fairly superficial. I'm not going to go into of a police state. And when you talk about the creation of a police state, is when you use a police force, a police service, to exact vengeance on people based on their political or partisan associations. A police service is meant to be free of partisan political control. That's the reality. And fear is that we are on a trajectory in which we are seeing political involvement in our police service. Let us return our police service back to the communities. Let our policemen once again be respected by the young people in this country. And this country, I mean Barbados. You're the 31st constituency. So for the present purposes, you're in Barbados. The opposition leader come to visit you. And I talk in Barbadian politics, so welcome to Barbados. When you go outside, you return to the USA. And so we want the respect to be returned to our police service. One of the other ways of dealing with crime is legislation, the parliament. And I am going to send a message now to the government of Barbados. We held a press conference last week and I said that bail is too easily available to prevent murder. We got men in Barbados who commit 2 and 3 murders. And when you go in the supermarket, as a former prime minister said, you pushing your cart that way and a man on 2 murder charges, he pass you in the aisle and he going that way. And you look, not you, and you look around. And you look around a man, he on 2 murder charges, and he shopping in the same supermarket as you. It's making tighter laws in relation to when your generation left Barbados. I think I said this somewhere last week or week before last. In my village when I was growing up, nobody was self-employed, Eddie. Everton, Grattan. I don't think we had self-employed people. Very few. Tailor, perhaps, yeah. You had a tailor. Barber, dress maker. Our parents told us, go to work. Go look for a job, of course. The country that you have left has changed remarkably. All of our nephews and grandchildren living in Barbados don't want a boss. They want self-employment. And if that is the case, a lot of self-employed people have solved the problem to a large extent of unemployment because they prefer to do it on their own. So if that is the case, the government must incentivize self-employed. They must encourage the kickstart. is possible. And I regretted when they knocked down the, I don't want to sound mean here, but when they knocked down the NIS building, whoever sits next to, you won't think that we are a set of mad people here. When they knocked down the National Insurance Building, opened in 1975, Eddie, by Queen Elizabeth, the same day I think that they knighted Sagari, I always felt that that NIS building could have become a zone, a building, you created kiosks in it, and put the young people in there. Don't charge them anything, put them in there, pay the light bill for them, pay the air conditioning bill. What does it ask for? Young entrepreneurs, but because come there, I know it is a park, you can go airplane down those. I would have preferred to see the National Insurance Building stand opposite the Fairchild Street bus stand. For those of you who have not visited us for a long time, yeah, make it a mall for young self-employed people where they leave more time to their own office and let the government pay the rents and the electricity. You know how much the government spend on unwanted and unneeded luxuries. We have a former government minister here. May I acknowledge Mr. Clyde Griffith? A great friend. Welcome, Clyde. Most welcome, Clyde. It is a black and very probably that you're here. Good. Yes, of course. Of course. So that I think the government needs to look its position of self-employment. And the last strategy for really solving some of the problems in Barbados relating to crime is the cultural factor. And I was referring to that when I talked about the little children who you'll see on the video. That descent that our young people are making into moral or immoral behavior. That, I mean, at the age, look, you can't sing banjo in the house. That's what they told us. And they were telling us then what we should whistle, John. You couldn't read the house. They were saving us against, they were saving us against the immorality of a nation. And we thought they were foolish. And we suck our teeth for the Americans who don't know what stoops mean. Man, them old people foolish. You can imagine he telling me he can't sing a calypso in there and call it banjo, or can't whistle. We would love to be able to tell our children the same thing now. Don't walk up like that. Don't bend over if you're a little girl and have a little boy. That's what is on the video that John showed you. And it's primary school, and I don't want us to condemn the children. They're 10 and 11. They're victims. They are victims. They wake up and find themselves doing that. Really taught them to do that. Adult entertainment taught them that that's legitimate behavior. That's acceptable behavior. Somebody told them that. And they're doing it, they're mimicking. And too many of the littles that you have been, we're all guilty, you know. Themes. Even the sexual action is violent. You can do guarantee. Oh, you can do You like Molly? And he can do something with somebody. I spoke about this in Parliament. And he can do something with the girl. If she like tear off the bark, he can tear off the bark off. And she, you know what that says? And that is in, you manage it. You're adults. That's not going to influence your behavior. That's not going to influence your relationship with your neighbor. But an innocent little man hearing these things every day. He's going down to school with his ZR. And he's walking the street and he's hearing it. And he's going home in his ZR and he's hearing it. And he goes home and he's hearing it on the radio. Messages of violence and sex and sexual violence. And when you look at the videos that came from this week in Barbados, you will understand why I say that our children have become victims of a society which has gone into moral decay because we have lost contact with our children. Our messages have not reached our children. Our parents' messages reached us and shaped us into reasonably good people. We're sinners. But there were some things that we would not do in public, even if we did them in private. We didn't take these behaviors into public places. As adults, we would have been too embarrassed. The children are no longer embarrassed. Standards have fallen. And our children are now doing, look, things that you would not believe in public. It's on camera. It is on camera. I'll probably send it to Grattan and Lawrence, and he can look at it. I'll send it to Eddie. But don't watch the whole thing. It is going to hurt you. It's going to hurt. And I'm not going to tell you the name of the school, but it's a primary school. And it happened this week. The point I make is that messages that are reaching them, sex and violence. It is a sustained and intense message that is being fed into their consciousness from day to day. And they are in the grips of a society which is out of control. Don't blame them. They're children. And as I've said, we were lucky as children that we had parents who cared. Who cared as to the kind of people that to be. I wonder how many of us care for what our children are becoming. And they don't have to be our biological children. But we must continue to have that care for our children because government policy is not really for people of our generation. We pass an act of parliament. Many times it takes effort, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. It's really for the children. A lot of what parliaments do, it's really for very young people. And so let us reverse that trend in our music and entertainment. It is an appeal that I have made from Parliament. And as I said, when I made it then, I was making it not for the sake of popularity, but for the sake of, as I said, if a politician wants to be popular, associates himself with the most popular of calypsonians and entertainers, and you jump down stage with that person, the audience says, oh man, he is a politician, but he's a regular fella. He walk up too. Popular. He's doing what he's doing. Because it's all late at night. I don't that's all late at night and make it his money, but don't transmit the messages to the children. Politicians should not be exploiting musicians, singers, because people want politicians and they expect their politicians to set the standard. And there's some young people who will see the politicians as their role models. There's something, Barbados call youth parliament. And I've seen it once or twice, and I've seen some of the habits, the bad habits of the politicians in parliament copied by these young people. Yes, standards, lowering of standards for the sake of popularity, when we should be standard bearers for principle and for excellence. And there's a philosopher in this who talks about spiritual darkness. Spiritual darkness. And I wonder if that is not what our country is experiencing. I've not come here to preach a sermon, I'm not qualified, but we are in the grips of a certain decay in our country. The lives of young children in Europe was contact with Barbados on WhatsApp and call. There's no excuse for no contact between these. There's a sense in which we want you to return. Desperately want you to return. And I know the government just before COVID was doing something called a regathering. And I don't criticize everything they do. That's an excellent initiative. The gathering of Barbadians back into the soil where the navel string is buried. Excellent initiative. I support that. I support that gathering of Barbadians from the diaspora, Toronto and New York and Philadelphia and Atlanta and England, to gather in Barbados, a symbolic gathering of a great people. Of our country. Of your primary school children, just week, I believe, you will understand that of which I speak. When every morning you wake and you wonder who lost their life the day before by knife or gun. As I said earlier, that was foreign. I remember being at my grandmother in Spooner's Hill, and the Ready Fusion is up in the corner. And something bad would come on and she would pause. Something was used to get a lot of bad news. It was as if we didn't get any bad news at all. And as I said, so in April, we had 7 they're hearing, as I said earlier, that is what our parents shielded us from. Don't sing banjo in the house. The one about the Congo, he never eat a white meat yet. Our parents knew. Everything you knew? Well, in case you were about to know, don't sing it in here. Don't come in without your shirt on. Precisely. Standards, standards, standards. Couldn't walk in the house bareback. You're not a man in here. And you left Barbados and took that lifestyle for granted and felt that you would come here and sustain us financially, not understanding that with your departure was caused a moral descent, because there's a sense in which all our country, you were the people that left. And the fact that you continue to support us, that you were good people and are good people, I congratulate you again. I commend you for what you've done for your country, what is left for you to do for your country. I don't have the answers, but if there are any questions when I finish, and I'll finish soon, I want to ask you to think of ways in which you can help your country. 166 square miles of good people. Some turn bad, and some can be turned back. What can you do for your country? What do you wish to do for your country? What do you, and what can you do? I describe this as the 31st constituency of Barbados. I asked you to help us to respect our institutions of authority. When you left Barbados, let me tell you what were the institutions of authority. The home, the school, the church, you know them, the police force. We lived with reverence for these institutions. They didn't all always treat us well, because I still don't forgive certain teachers for the way they lash me. I thought some of them went too far. But we respected those institutions as institutions of authority. That's gone. How do we restore it? I don't have all the answers. Derek Allen doesn't have all the answers. I want to ask you to assist us in the political struggle in Barbados and to insist that our politics should once again embrace religious and moral values. And don't be ashamed to say that I had a Christian upbringing, and all of you in Christian. I was a sinner. I respect this as a sinner. We come in here at 5 o'clock and we say morning. Explain to the fellow in the back. Let us once again be able to say morning as solidarity with each other, as a statement in hope, a statement in faith in each other, that we can once again be the Barbados that we love. I ask for a return to religious values, and I'm not ashamed to do that. I'm a sinner. I'm not ashamed to do that. And to remind you that at the heart of Christianity are 3 virtues. 3. Humility, justice, and the greatest Love. And that is what all of you were taught before you left Barbados. And you've come to New York, and you've come to the great United States and Toronto and Atlanta, and you've never forgotten it. Humility and acceptance that there's somebody greater, that there's a greater being, and that there actually may be a God. That's humility. That it is not all about you, but it is about the other person and the other person's right to peacefully coexist with you. And justice. And you saw it written on the blackboard in primary school. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. There were political messages too, and social messages, and messages of human conduct, humility and justice, and the greatest, something that we are embarrassed to talk about, love. And we do so many things out of love, but we're not conscious of it. You didn't have to go and purchase the envelope in the dead of winter. February. Because some people are there. And you want to sustain them. And you want to share with them. And you want to see them make it. We down there not knowing the struggle. Temperatures below zero, below 32 Fahrenheit. In the apartment. In loneliness sometimes. Yet, love. Love for your parents, for your brothers and sisters who stayed behind, who did not come on the front lines of battle into this large battlefield. And I applaud you for your success in this strange land. Because when the man did not say morning, I knew I was in a strange land. And as the good book says, how can you sing the Lord's song in a strange land? You found a way to sing it by communicating back with your roots. And I want you to continue to communicate back with your roots. And I've come to tell you what I believe is truth in your country. And I don't tell you that because I'm leader of the opposition. I tell you that because there's a crisis, a very real crisis, and the evidence is there of crisis in Barbados. I don't want to bring a message of a country that is falling over a precipice. But morally, if you see the behavior of children in Barbados, children, and if it is more, it is one too many. If you see their behavior, that will be so foreign to you when you see it. You must know that we are close to a precipice of social disaster, crime, and cost of living, and corruption, and a culture in moral decay, the 4 C's. Please come home as often as you can. I know a lot of you here have reached retirement or are about to retire. My friend at the front is smiling. You're not coming back. You're going back. Excellent. 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 I wish you well. Congratulations. You've been a good soldier. 56 years on the front lines of battle. And where are you going? Home. Home. When a person after 56 years can say home and not mean this place, that's love, my sister. That's love. That's love. And still sending barrels home. That's love. And still sending money home. Love. Love. That is a good note on which I should aim. One love. One love.
My brothers and sisters, this is your time to ask questions. We're going to take Neil Jones first, and then
O'Neill.
Everton and Sam, in that order.
We know that you and Everton know me as O'Neill.
O'Neill, yes.
So you go together. But
Yes. Ely Road, Rockhampton.
I heard you talk about crime.
Mhm.
You said you see the laws and all that, but you didn't say how you didn't talk about how you could prevent the crime in the first place. You talked about after the crime is done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But one thing I